I'm composing figures of motion, and I'm composing them out of very springy spring steel. And I'll show you one of them. You take a piece of steel, you know, and I attach it to a motor. But you don't do it, you don't get into devising anything with it until you're in the mood. Because unless you can keep trying to find something that's simply fascinating to you, there's not much point. So you wait until you're in the mood, and then when you find a piece of steel, you might go like this with it, you know, and roll it about, and so on, and you gradually get the grip of an idea.
New Zealand-born artist Len Lye set out to create a new kind of art based on movement. For more than 60 years he made sculptures and films and won international recognition in both media. When Lye died in 1980, his work was entrusted to a group of New Zealanders who were working hard to keep Lye's art on the move and to complete his most ambitious plans.
I'll get in the box and I'll manage the stuff in here and just keep the box on the ground too. You take this end here, be careful, it's pretty springy. And you walk around. John, you pick it up when there's a bit out of the box and it starts to get too heavy for Gary.
Coming around.
Try and keep low, otherwise it'll jump out like a clock spring. Here we go. Now let's lay it down on this clock. Bring it my way as much as you can. Okay. Right, just stop there. We're going to lift the blade onto the work now.
Right.
And I'll just get one end anchored in place. Gently. Whoa. Here we go. Great. When it comes over, you'll have quite a lot of weight. And Gary, if you can help me hold it down on the base, keep it, great, keep it down on that protection. Roll it over slowly. Okay, John.
Len Lye's kinetic or motion sculpture Universe is almost ready for an exhibition opening in Auckland.
Can you go a little to the left? I see my role as keeper of the collection. That is, to try and preserve the intention of Len Lye as faithfully as possible, to try and keep those works performing as he intended them to perform. All of the pieces of metal that twirl in space or shake or vibrate, all of those things that we see publicly are to be kept as close to the original works as is humanly possible. But the mechanisms which drive them and the programmers which control their motion, all of that can be upgraded, changed and modernised. The real challenge with Universe was to get it to run silently. The original one used to hum because there are these giant magnets underneath that attract the loop of steel on top of the base. We now have built a Universe that's absolutely silent. And so what you have is this wonderful motion which appears to come from nowhere, as if there's no force acting on the loop of steel, as if it has a whole mind, a whole energy of its own.
You know, in my studio, I make these type models, kind of a prototype. And they're really planned for the big scale image. For instance, this is now 9 feet, and this is 6 foot high. Why, it would be 60 foot high and 90 foot long. And I've checked with the steel mill people, and they tell me it's feasible.
Of course, increasing the scale is easier said than done. When you increase the size of a work, let's say making it twice as big, it doesn't automatically follow that all of the components need to be twice as powerful to drive it or twice as thick to support the same sort of image or the same sort of shapes. Indeed, with a work like Universe, for example, to make that work twice as big requires a piece of material, a piece of steel, which goes from weighing 40 kilos to weighing 400 kilos. It's a tenfold increase.
Now, when it's that size, it would serve as a gateway to a temple. This I'm showing to represent a person. That's the scale. He is 6 foot high, and they go through this arrangement here, which I call the universe. And 60 foot above them, then, is the universe, and in they go to see a most amazing kind of grouping, a grouping which symbolizes nature, energy. My work, I think, is going to be pretty good for the 21st century. Why the 21st? It's simply that there won't be the means until then. I don't think there'll be the means to have what I want.
A very, very good artist is forward projected about 50 years. But I think Len went a lot further than that, and I don't really think he's discovered yet. I think he's just starting to come into his own in his work. And so he didn't waste too much of his time building it. He really got into imaging it. So for me, he's a Leonardo, he's a Vinci figure. He's a figure that's sort of dancing and all the stuff's just pouring through him, and he doesn't have the time to make too much of it manifest. That's up to us to do.
Len Lye's kinetic art has always involved collaboration with engineers. Evan Webb has brought Universe to the engineering laboratory at Canterbury University.
Most of the works in the collection are models for much larger works. And part of my job is to find ways of building those to the scale that Len Lye really wanted them. Outdoor, monumental, huge.
One of the things which we've been discussing, Evan, is the difficulty of erecting this out in the open once it's scaled up by a factor of 2. Because there'll be a tremendous amount of stored energy in this, which is just a large spring. And one can picture it behaving rather like a fly swat if it gets released at the wrong moment. 4 years ago, Evan Webb approached me and asked whether we might be able to predict whether if one of the twisters in Flip and 2 twisters were to break, it would be likely to injure one of the bystanders. We were able to predict that the item would just fall to the floor. And subsequently, when we were offered the chance to look at Universe, we felt that this might be a very exciting project for one of the students, because working at the interface between art and engineering can provide a creative element which is sometimes missing from some of the more mundane engineering tasks they have to undertake as students.
This is a great drawing zone. From here you can actually send this drawing through to another software package which you can do finite analysis on it, and we can have a look at the deflection and the modes of vibrations that the sculpture, the current size and the larger size, might undertake.
Will you be able to work out the stresses on the steel from this program?
Yeah, this package will predict the vibrations and the deflection due to gravity on the steel ring.
He had a way of thinking about sculpture and film that was direct and immediate to an unparalleled degree. I was very interested to see in a big show recently in Bonn called Territorium Artis that Len's Universe had been picked as one of the 100 most significant works of the century. And I think it's that view coming out of Europe of the last 90 years of art history that is probably going to place Len more firmly than any other.
In the 1910s and 20s, Len Lye was one of the very few New Zealanders to become deeply involved with modern art. The work he was making was influenced by European art movements such as Cubism, Futurism and Surrealism. But soon this young maverick came up with his own angle, the idea of developing an art based on movement. He turned to film as the ideal medium for exploring movement. In Tusalava, he took the animated film and gave it new kinds of imagery and a powerful sense of physical movement. As a filmmaker, Len Lye kept coming up with new techniques and new kinds of movement. In Colourbox, he pioneered the idea of direct filmmaking, getting rid of the camera and painting directly onto celluloid. Trade Tattoo celebrates the rhythm of people at work. Lye took black and white documentary footage of a variety of jobs and transformed it through new techniques of editing and colour printing. All Lye's work was a result of his lifetime study of movement. He wrote,
"As an artist, I go after figures of motion. I want to find a particular form of motion which fascinates me. I came to look at the way things moved, like the physical curling of a wave, by trying to feel the movement in my body, in my muscles, in my bones. I've tried to isolate that figure of motion, to make images from it. Everyone gets pleasure from movement. We organize this pleasure in sport as well as art. We make judgments of speed, weight, energy and motion. We time the fall of the wave to propel the surfboard. What distinguishes kinetic art is the emphasis on the pattern of motion rather than on the object making it. I thought, if there's such a thing as composing music, there should be such a thing as composing motion. After all, there are melodic figures, why can't there be figures of motion? And I've stuck with that idea ever since. I was messing around with a particularly vibrant little image I was composing on film. The image had a kind of zizzy quality. I chased around high and low for some music, and at last I got some African drums that had the same quality of ziz in their short, sharp, rhythmic figures as I had in my visuals.
You know, that film, Free Radicals, well, it was made 15 years ago. And when I see it now, I think it still holds up, but I'm into a different type of kinetic art. I'm composing figures of motion, and I'm composing them out of very springy spring steel.
Lye made a series of sculptures influenced by primitive dance. One of those works is Bell Wand. Here we have a slender rod spun in space with a bell on the top, like the head of a dancer, rattling and singing away. And about the middle we have this small ball which orbits on a piece of cotton, like a hula hoop, you might say. All of the works that Lye made employ harmonics, or the natural frequencies of the material. That is, when you take a rod or a sheet of metal and you spin it or vibrate it, it will form a pattern. You can see this probably best of all with a work like Zebra. Here the rod is spun at such a speed until it starts to belly out and form a single standing wave in space. The stripes on Zebra fill the form and create a volume.
We're going to see now a series of photographs taken by a friend of mine. We were wandering along with a 40-foot rod. We cut it in half so we get it through the streets. We carried it, and I ran into a friend, and I said, come along, Maury, take some photographs. Maury Logan and I set up the thing. We went to a mechanic who is nearby, and Morris Gross. And here we are standing by, getting this thing started, giving it the great heave-ho there. Not heavy, but it's springy. My wife is at the far end, Robert Graves here, Morris Gross and his Graves. Here we have it setting into its holder. That's Morris Gross there, holding it like mad. It's a simple mock-up base. We don't know what's going to happen. We're all trying it out. The length of that thing is about 35 feet. It's a 1 1/8 inch diameter tube. It sways in the breeze. It's called a giant wand. Now, if you had 125 of those things and the sun hit them and they were controlled in their motion and they were lit at night and so forth, you'd get what we're all after, which is an image. That's the trademark back there, the Empire State, to prove we're not kidding, it's down the West Village.
Len put the Len Lye Foundation together shortly before his death, and it was charged, the foundation is charged to look after the works, all of his works, and to propagate his theories and to develop sculpture in the large sizes that he envisaged. So we're building large works, such as wind wand.
All of the earlier wind wands that Len made were made from metal tubes. But there's a problem with metal tubes. They don't withstand the swaying for very long. They crumple, they fatigue, they fracture, and they fall over. Len had unsuccessfully experimented with a wind wand made from fiberglass. We've taken up that research again in order to make a wind wand from fiberglass.
Good your hand here, man.
Thank you.
Doing a lot of trust here, Evan. We'll see you later, Evan.
It's enormously challenging to try and get a structure 25 metres high and taller to stand vertically and unsupported when there's no wind blowing on it, yet sway from side to side like a palm tree in a hurricane when the wind does start to act upon it.
It'll be amazing.
Yeah. Here it comes, Evan.
Good stuff, guys. Looks good. Just don't lance me.
Just watch your head.
Ask him to hold it, Brian, while I clean the hole here. It's one thing to have an aesthetic plan or design for a wind wand, but it's quite another to find the technology and the engineering design that will bring this about. This is the challenge which faced our engineering consultant in America when we asked him to design a mast that didn't stand rigid, but rather bent in the breeze. The technology he employed is state-of-the-art. It's the same sort of technology which he employs in his design of the America's Cup masts, which is another project he's working on at the moment.
The man wants to come out of the hole now. Right. What's the There you go.
Great, thank you.
What attracts me to wind wand is a number of things. Its height. It's a very tall sculpture. It's got an ethereal sense about it, this clear sphere with a red sphere inside, and it's drifting through space. The whole wand, which is very slender, is bending in accordance with the wind, and the stronger the wind, the more it lays over.
Now we want the big one, the full-size one.
You'll get a big one, John.
We want it in a hurry.
We're currently working with a 12-metre prototype wind wand, which then gives us the characteristics to build a 25-metre wind wand, which we're building now, and then that will be transformed into the full-scale 45-metre wind wand. And these are the steps that we have to go through to ensure that we get quite complex engineering structures correct.
The next fiberglass wind wand will need to bend more, but Evan Webb gets valuable feedback from the prototype about flexibility and the airflow round the wand.
My parents were both artists, and they also did all the repairs around the home. They'd repair the car, fix the roof when it was leaking, and all those sorts of things, which is pretty common for a lot of New Zealand families. Do it yourself is part of our culture, part of our heritage. I bring both of those things, which I find quite natural, my love for art and that do-it-yourself attitude to this job. I think the sense of movement that Len brings to his work is that same exploratory sense we feel when we're children. It's the sense of discovering our world through interacting with it, through moving in it, through playing in it. It's the same sense that you have when you're tinkering, when you're fixing the car, when you're pulling things apart. It's finding out how things work, finding out how they move. It's that idea that I see in his work.
This is Roundhead, which Len made for me with my wedding ring in the middle of it. And I've got a beauty from Woolworths. And this is what we kind of think of looking at when it's too hot to have a fire. And Len always regarded it as better than having a cat in the house.
Roundhead is actually quite complex. The mechanism that drives it is quite a complicated one. And it's made more complicated too because there's a small music box inside that bass, and from time to time this plays a tune which Len has altered. Most of the works seem simple. Pieces of metal, rods, waving gently, spinning vigorously. But each of those bits of metal is actually quite special. It's chosen for the particular properties that make it perform as Len intended. For example, with grass, all of those fine wires are individually polished. The ends of them are individually finished, and it's that polishing and finishing that gives them that special sparkle as it sways gently from side to side.
A little bit towards this way, right. Now take this out of the way, somebody. Someone hold the ladder.
One of Lye's most famous sculptures is Fountain, which has been included in major exhibitions of kinetic art around the world. In 1977, Lye was at the Gavette Brewster Gallery in New Plymouth to assemble a new version of Fountain.
Now don't worry about the ones that don't go in.
Squash it tight.
Maybe.
What's the matter, John?
Screwdriver? Here. Let's have a look then.
Yeah, let's take this down a bit.
All right, can you reach up there?
Now we have to. It's got to go on there to get the ring lined up with that stuff, see?
Oh, the ring's
the same.
slightly larger in diameter.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
That's
all right. I forego.
Sorry, that's why.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll loosen it all and get in what we can.
Together.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another.
Now, can you let go?
And now,
Slightly to your left, then.
and a wee
Right,
bit to your,
okay.
wee back towards the window.
Four left.
1, 2, 3. Oh, beautiful.
How does that look all right?
Fountain's an intriguing work because Lye has managed to get light coming out of a bundle of rods. And he's done this really simply. He's taken the bundle and given it a twist and then revolved the bundle in space. Wonderfully simple, wonderfully effective.
This image is a polarity to the wild stuff, euphoric and lazy. It gets that kind of complete opposite about energy to the blade, which is going boom, boom, which you can tell is programmed and under control.
Where does something like this begin?
Well, that's a question that most people ask. Do you conceive that right from the beginning as that final image? The answer is no. You get into a mood of wanting to isolate some feeling out of yourself, and so you fiddle around and doodle about, and for instance, here we have a handsaw. And you may spot a thing like that, and you know that a handsaw is springy.
So you shake it. Most hand saws are very springy. This is a short one, but it's springy enough to make a shape, see? And you think, well, that's a nice shape. Now, instead of shaking it this way, which you start off doing, you turn it around, and you do it this way to see what shape it makes. And you think, well, if I have a mechanical device, a grip, a type of holder, into a reciprocating stroke, the thing goes back and forth very fast. Well, look, there's another piece of thing here, a piece of material, see? This happens to be a bit of stainless. And if this was around upside down, and you get that kind of an effect, which you then go off to a mechanic and say, look, in my case, a fellow named Morris Gross, look, Morris, how about if we put this thing into a holder mechanically? And he gets the idea of a sanding machine. Sanding machine is going like this, you see. You put this thing in it, and lo and behold, we've got a shape. We'd go to a lot of experimentation for size, for relationship, for the striker hitting it, all that sort of thing I then develop after he's given me the mechanical means.
Blade is always a challenge to install. It's a machine that we now have to bolt to the floor of each museum we place it in to stop it wandering off around the gallery space. The components in Blade wear out more frequently than in any of the other sculptures. This is, of course, because Blade is the most violent of the works. The piece of metal shakes very vigorously and it pounds the tripe out of the cork ball on the roll. The sound of these works is as important as their visual performance, and Lye recognised this, particularly with a work like Blade. His vision was to increase the scale of this work so it formed a large circle of blades, and that he was going to call Steelhenge.
It will be about anything from 50 feet to 100 foot high. It will rotate and reflect light to you. And you'll hear the striker booming up. It's like an Aztec monument to the sun.
Evan, this is a terrific model. This really looks great. Now, you say this is about 4 times the size of Len's present work.
That's right. Yeah, it's about 7 metres tall, this one. But I'll run it for a moment and show you some of
The Lye Foundation is planning to build giant versions of Blade. Evan has made a scale model that solves some of the technical problems. A think tank of engineers meets regularly to develop this and other Lye projects.
It's going to, of course, run a lot slower because that piece of metal's so big.
Yeah, so it's in a harmonic there.
It's in a, yeah, there's the first one, is about there.
Yeah, now you can feel it. You can feel it. Beautiful, isn't it? That's a double. Len's work just about tears itself out of the room. And the whole, you know, you've got a whole gallery shaking. Remember the gallery in New South Wales?
Yeah.
The floors were shaking and people were saying that the sound and the vibration was being transmitted through the whole building from one. I mean, Len no doubt thought that was terrific because no one could escape the work. The Lye projects have been damn difficult, but then everything that Len did, you know, tested the boundaries in film and in sculpture, and it's just part of the process. You hang in there, and with all the assistance you can gather from very enthusiastic and clever people who come on board, as it were, and you just keep working on these things till they're resolved.
How much steel is usually on one of these coils?
Many New Zealand engineering and electronics companies have helped to maintain or enlarge the Lye sculptures. At Levin Sawmakers, Evan is testing a coil of carbon steel in preparation for a larger blade.
Certainly a lot of stored energy in that coil, isn't there? To see how high we can get it.
Take it up nice and quietly.
To see how high a piece of metal and blade stands, Len used to take the material and push it up into space until it would no longer support its own weight. And that was the critical height. That's where he chopped the metal off, and that's where he clamped it into the machine, at that height.
Let's see what that is now. Okay, about 2.3 above the clamp.
Okay.
Ah, that's nice.
It's interesting. It seems to be going all right, and it gives us an insight on what other people do. We have a situation, most of the guys that work here are called saw doctors, and I know that people do sculptures called artists or whatever you like to call it. I think in a lot of ways that these guys are also artists because of the things they have to do and what they have to do with the same steel.
One of the works that Len wanted to produce was Flippin' Two Twisters. And I went to New York and I stayed with him there in his studio for some weeks. And he had a small maquette, a working model of Flippin' Two Twisters. And he explained to me that he wanted it a certain size. And that was about, in those days, 9 feet high or 10 feet high, and it was to function a certain way. I spent 9 months in one of our large engineering workshops producing this work, full-size work. And I went back to New York and I said to Len, here we are, here it is. And I had photographs and sound images and so on. And then I got to really know this man because he put me down in a chair, poured a stiff rum and orange juice, got me all relaxed, you see. And then he said, now, John, now that we've mastered this, we're going to build the real one. And I looked at him with amazement. What do you mean, Len? He said, I want one twice the size. And I was absolutely staggered. Went to Canterbury University and asked them for help. They came back and said that the parameters that I was looking for were mathematically insoluble. So we simply just worked right through the whole thing on twice the size and in fact, got to where we are now, which is that stunning work that Len conceived.
Although Lye was no engineer, he had a wonderful sense about how metal could behave aesthetically when it was flipped and twisted and shaken in space. Unfortunately, what he required from the material sometimes didn't match what the material was originally intended for. As a consequence, he often pushed it to the limit. He often pushed it beyond its manufacturing tolerances, and it snapped. With Flippin' Two Twisters, we're constantly replacing the material in the blades and the flip because it's stressed so much in the performance that's expected from it.
There we have it. Oh, great. Oh, they're nice and clean.
Jenny, can you bring over that cleaning cloth there? Just give this a wipe. Thanks.
Now, when this bends round, it'll be like a snake's head.
It'll be sort of bobbing up in space. It'll be like this. And see the axle up there?
Right.
If you tie
So you want the knot on this side?
If you tie the knot on that side, it'll just bobble there and allow me to slip it straight onto the axle.
Okay.
One of those lovely clay pictures of yours. Gently does it. Chris, your job is to try and keep it off the scaffolding. My relationship with Flippin' Two Twisters, or Trilogy as it's sometimes called, is a precarious one, a somewhat dangerous one. I usually end up suspended from the ceiling of museums trying to install this work. It's enormous, 20 feet long strips of steel, and they have to be attached to motors up high. But that sense of danger, I think, is also conveyed to the people who come to view this wonderful work. It's huge, it's thunderous in the sound it makes. The spinning metal looks dangerous, and indeed is dangerous, and it has that effect on people.
Okay, go.
Okay, Jenny, just make sure it doesn't come onto your back there.
Hang on, I'm not pulling. Wait a minute. Just go a bit more slowly. If I do the pulling, then I can. You just pull it out. That's yours.
I've got the weight.
You need to select.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yep. It's one end tamed. I've got the nuts.
Thanks, Dad.
Take the weight on the rope, please.
Yeah, well, I can't because someone up there is pulling.
You can release down there, Jenny.
Releasing.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yep. Yep. What I'm also pleased about is they got the steel to us in beautiful condition. There's hardly a scratch on it.
That's great.
Beautifully polished.
How often have the blades fractured? I mean, has this happened before?
It has. I'm not sure yet, Priscilla. We need actually to have timing devices on the machine so that we know how often it's played, and then try and get some quantitative results about how long a set of blades last.
Right.
But since my involvement, we've probably been through 5 or 6 blades.
Yep.
2 doubles. Lovely. Lovely.
You obviously know the work intimately.
See, when this broke in Wellington, it simply fell straight to the floor.
Straight down.
Yeah.
What was it doing when it broke? Was it actually...
It was doing a triple when it broke.
Yeah. It just went straight down. That's a relief. It's a strange little squeak.
Those are the brakes. And you see, the female part has the final say.
Not quite sure how I should respond to that, Evan.
This programme was made with the help of your broadcasting fee, so you can see more of New Zealand on air.